Welcome to the shop, my friend. Steve here at SKS Props, and in today's video I have part 2 of my Sandman helmet build. Now if you didn't check out part 1, be sure to do that, because in that video I go over all of the fabrication steps that it takes to put this helmet together. I even have free PDF files that you can download from my website to build right along with me. In this part 2 video, I'm going to show you what it takes to paint and weather it, to make it look aged and distressed, because paint is what sells a prop. You can have an amazing prop and a meh paint job and it will ruin it. You can have an okay prop and some amazing paint and it will look fantastic. So I want to show you what it takes to paint this Sandman helmet. Let's go ahead and get started. So at the end of part 1, we left our helmet raw and now it needs to be primed. To do that, I'm going to use Plasti Dip and I'm going to apply 2 light layers to the helmet. The Plasti Dip helmet was allowed to cure before I decided I wanted to add some additional textures. Utilizing an old prop maker trick of baking soda and super glue, I'm going to add some additional textures to the surface. As an example, I'm going to apply super glue in the corner of the helmet here, and then using a toothpick, I'm going to move that super glue around to give it a more organic look. Once I'm satisfied with the pattern, I sprinkle on some baking soda, and after I let that chemically set up, I brush off the excess. And here you can see it turns into some really cool raised details. Like battle damage, this is a technique that you could easily overdo. So I'm being mindful of where I put these textures because, again, just like painting, this is all about telling a story. With my textures complete, I wipe off the excess with a damp paper towel. I want to continue to add some textures that aren't quite as harsh, so to do that I'm going to use some Flex Bond and Liquitex Mars Black. These mediums mixed together are then stippled onto the helmet using a chip brush. To lock it all in and redefine the surface, I'm going to do a second coat of Plasti Dip. For my base layers, I'm going to use some camouflage beige for the bone and some red oxide for the helmet. I also add some self-etching primer just because it's the only rattle can I have that's green. My first step is to do a black wash over the entire surface using some Liquitex Mars Black and a large mop brush. This is painted onto the helmet, and then I use a damp paper towel to remove some of the excess. The same black wash is also applied to the spine and the skull. A wash of raw sienna is then applied to all of the bone sections. Just like the black, excess paint is then taken away with a paper towel. At this point we have a fantastic base, lots of different colors, lots of different values. For the main body of the helmet, I want to go with a green, so I'm using a mixture of sap green, cadmium yellow, and raw sienna. These colors are going to be mixed together and applied in different opacities. That's going to give the helmet a lot of really cool hue and saturation changes. The green is a little too bright in some areas, so I'm going to add some cadmium red to desaturate the color. And as a final highlight, I add some bright green to the edge, but then using the paper towel, I wipe some of that excess away. And those that know me know that my paint jobs are all about the layers. For the section around the eye, I'm going to be using Liquitex Iridescent Rich Bronze. The trick with this type of metallic paint, notice I'm daubing it on, I'm not brushing it on. This is going to give the paint kind of an irregular surface, almost acting like a patina. For the eyelet and the other metallic helmet details, I'm going to be using Liquitex Iridescent Rich Silver. Just like the bronze, I'm stippling it on and then feathering it out, continuing that irregular surface. Notice here that I'm also allowing some of those original rattle can colors to still show through. Watered down raw sienna makes a great rust color. So this is going to be applied to the metallic surfaces, and then I go back with my damp paper towel and I wipe off a lot of the excess. See how the paint just kind of stays in all those little details that we're able to put into the piece. I apply the raw sienna a little bit heavier around the bridge of the nose, just because in my mind, the area around the mouth would have more condensation. And with a larger piece like this, I'm constantly moving the prop up close and then farther away from me. Seeing the helmet at different distances can affect where I feel it needs more paint. With the main part of the helmet done, now I can start working on the bone. Liquitex unbleached titanium is going to be the first highlight layer applied to the surface. This pigment is dry brushed onto the surface using a filbert brush with very stiff bristles. This makes sure that the lighter paint doesn't get down into all those little hole details that I created in part 1. And here you can see how I'm adding paint to highlight areas on the back of the skull. The same dry brush process is also applied to the spine at the front of the mask. Now the dry brush looks pretty good, but it's not really cohesive. So I'm going to create another lighter wash using the unbleached titanium and the raw sienna. This wash is applied all over the bone pieces again, tying in the dry brush. Liquitex Heavy Body Parchment is my last highlight layer. This is dry brushed over the surface using the mop brush, but only picking the highest points. As a final metallic highlight, iridescent rich silver is applied to the surface pretty thick. Again, notice that I'm not brushing it, I'm just tapping the surface to drop the paint onto the piece. This gives the surface more of an irregular texture and goes along with that corroded metal look. To install the lenses for the helmet, I'm going to use clear Easter eggs. The surface of the plastic egg is marked with a scribe, and I make sure to enlarge that so that I have enough material to glue. I use a cutting wheel on my rotary tool and then a sanding sponge to knock down the burrs. I spray the inside of each lens with a little bit of matte acrylic just to frost it up. Then each lens can be glued into place. Now I know a bunch of you that are actually building this are wondering, like, where am I going to get Easter eggs this time of year, unless it is actually around Easter. Again, like I said, I planned this build months and months and months ago, so Easter eggs are readily available at Walmart. I did find some online. If you go to Google and you type in like clear Easter egg, there were a couple options out there. They're not relatively like super cheap, so bear that in mind. You may have to just wait until they come back around at Walmart again. But these eggs are approximately the 4-inch by 6-inch eggs that I was able to locate. Now let's say you couldn't locate any Easter eggs at all. And if you didn't care if it had this dome to it, any basic plastic would work in there. I mean, so you could take a jug of, you know, like we get those giant jugs of M&Ms from Sam's Club. You could cut those and place those in as lenses. You could find some oversized sunglasses, trim those down, and also glue those in. Now, the biggest issue that I had with these Easter eggs is because the type of plastic they are, they do not take a dye to them, so I could not actually tint it. If you're actually wanting to black tint your eyes, by all means, do a vac form and tint it. If you're wanting to know how to do that, my buddy Bill Duran over at Punish Props has several videos on how to vac form, how to make a simple vac form, how to then tint that plastic and install it. You know, if that doesn't matter to you, again, I can't tint these. Now, one of the options that I had considered was I used some nightshade on a test piece, and always buy extras for test pieces. I actually wish I had bought several more of these, but I had 3. So I had 1 to test and 2 not to mess up. Now, my test piece did really well. I mean, that looks really cool. It tinted the interior of it, still gave it that black glossiness to it on the exterior. But the problem with this is these are designed for like tail lights or front lights, and so they're designed to have a light behind them. It just dims it. The problem with that is, even though I can see like the outline of a light, my vision is not very good in them. It's fairly opaque, so I didn't really like that alternative. Now, this is just going to be pretty much a display piece for me, so I'm not going to cosplay it. I could have done this and it would have been fine, but if you're wanting to cosplay, I would probably recommend a lens that you could actually see out of. So my solution to that, because I've got my clear lenses on here, is I'm going to use my black fabric technique that I use on a bunch of my masks. So on the interior, behind each one of these eyes, I'm going to glue some black chiffon fabric, and that will allow me to still see out, but nobody will be able to see in. The chiffon fabric is cut into some pretty big squares, but any additional material can be trimmed away later on. For this process, I use a cool temp hot glue gun. That way I can use my fingers to press the material into the adhesive. I would definitely not recommend to try this with a high temp hot glue gun. But the fabric does a great job of shielding the interior, and here you can see how I trimmed away the excess. For the helmet to fit my head properly, I'm going to glue into place some thick upholstery foam. A large section is going to be glued into the back and then a small piece into the front. The friction from just these two pieces works great and it fits my head perfect. After looking at it, the lenses were a little too clean for me, so I mix up some cadmium yellow and raw sienna. This mixture is brushed onto the perimeter of the lens, adding no water, but then wiping away almost all of it. This just gives the appearance that some dirt and grime is built up in the recesses. So you all can see the steps that I took to not only make, but paint my own Sandman cosplay helmet. And again, free PDF files available for this over on my website that you can download to make your own. Because nothing would make me happier than seeing a ton of Sandman cosplays at conventions this next year. And if you are building any of my builds or utilizing some HD foam, be sure to tag me at SKS Props on Twitter and Instagram because I want to see your creations. Until next time, build your best with the best. HD foam.